Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Hugh here from Creator Up, and today I'm with Devin here.
I'm Devin from Gimbal Guru, and we have the Guru 360 with the GoPro Fusion, and we're going to go over today the reasons why you want to use a gimbal over in-camera stabilization.
So why we want to choose a physical gimbal instead of just relies on the in-camera stabilization of the GoPro Fusion?
It's because I feel like you have more control with a mechanical gimbal over your image quality, whereas you can choose where you want the camera to be looking, pointing, but also, you know, the problem with in-camera stabilization is you get that jello effect, and it can introduce that effect at any point, any time. You really kind of, I mean, maybe with some experience, you kind of can know when the software might pull on it, but the reality is you really don't know when it's going to, like, feel that that's not stable, I must correct it. Whereas with a gimbal, it's mechanically keeping the lens, quote-unquote, center, and that way you don't get as much drift in terms of the sensor reading, you know, the incoming light. You know, you get a much cleaner image because the light's always hitting the sensor, hopefully in the same spot.
Exactly, especially in the stitch line area like this area. If you see software stabilization, you usually see that jello effect people just don't like about it. And with mechanical stabilization, you usually don't have that.
Correct. You get a more uniform image. You know, everything is moving at the same rate, the same speed. I guess what I like about the gimbals is they're physically keeping the lenses, quote-unquote, stable. Yes, they are moving them, but they're also keeping them from getting really too much motion drift. And honestly, all that drift is going to cause that sensor, as it's scanning, you know, the image, to have a drift between its own pixels. Like, even when I film with my Sony A7S, I usually turn off the in-body image stabilization because of the fact that, you know, as I'm filming, that sensor is moving, but I really don't need it to move. I don't want it to move. I have a gimbal to do that. And I find that if it moves the sensor, my resolution of my image also suffers because it's just getting a lot of, like, you could say aliasing in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
The pixels aren't lining up from frame to frame as it goes from, you know, if you're shooting 24 frames, you know, half of those frames could have the sensor further to the left by a few degrees. Anyways, I'm going on too far about that.
It's a good knowledge that the viewer should know, because just like if you get a DSLR, you never rely on the in-camera stabilization. Even like GH5 or Sony have really good in-camera stabilization, but people just don't use it. Usually use a gimbal. That's the exact same reason why I need a physical gimbal. Even on a camera, have an in-camera stabilization. I mean, it's a legit reason for do that.
Right. It's sort of like how, like, if you've driven a manual transmission car, you generally prefer to drive a manual transmission car over an automatic transmission car because you really can dial in the way you want it to perform and behave. Whereas I feel when you lead to in-camera stabilization, you're just letting the software, the system decide what it thinks is the best choice. It's, you know, it's just a computer. It doesn't know beauty, you know. It doesn't know how to perceive it, you know. It's like, it goes like, oh, 0.3456, it's a few whatever. All right, we'll correct. But is that beautiful? Is that a good image? Is that stable, or is that jello? You know.
Exactly. And so how can you use that with the Fusion? Now you have a couple mode, right? Can you show us like what different mode you have?
Yeah, we have, right now we're in the filming mode 2. That'll follow the yaw and the tilt. So we can actually tilt it all the way forward here and eventually invert it if we wanted to. Or we can tilt it back up and re-invert it. So we press in the joystick right now once, and now it should be... Okay, now we're in the one-axis follow mode, so it'll no longer follow us on the tilt. I'll go sideways here. See how it's not tilting forward anymore. It'll just follow yaw, and then you press it twice, and then it goes to two-axis follow. And then if you press it in all the way, 5 seconds, we should get to lock mode here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Now we're in lock mode. So now it won't follow us any way we turn. Always hold it.
And the lock mode, is it support the best way to use it on a roller and a drone, right?
If you want to, I typically like using follow mode 2 because that allows the gimbal to move as the gimbal moves, and it'll move freely. Because, I mean, the reality is we do have some physical limitations of space here, and if it's in lock mode, potentially it could, you know, bind against itself. And when we're flying on a drone, I tend to leave it in filming mode 2 so that the tilt will follow the drone's movement, and the yaw will follow the drone's movement. So the gimbal and the drone are always moving together versus against each other. So,
okay, it's good tips.
Because once it's in the air, I mean, the only way you can readjust it is getting it back down on the ground.
Because even you cannot physically see where's the position of the camera of the drone, so you cannot just like control. You can control with the remote control, by the way, with this gimbal, but you physically cannot see it, so it's just hard to control it on a drone.
And some drone advice here, highly recommend, is a 1/4 20 in the bottom. but all these things can potentially come unscrewed. So definitely think about some sort of safety tether system, just so you don't lose your camera or gimbal.
Yeah.
And or your livelihood potentially.
Yeah. So in this gimbal, there's like a quarter inch screw right here.
You're right. Yes, correct. Yeah.
So you can attach like safety cable change on the gimbal itself. So if the gimbal fall apart, the camera fall apart, you can still like save the camera and the gimbal. You lose your shot, but you still have your cameras.
Yes. Your ego may be hurt, but hey, at least your insurance is not being called upon.
Exactly. So now let's go ahead and teach you how to set up the GoPro Fusion and the gimbal.
When you're filming with the GoPro Fusion, you want to pay attention to your GoPro mount thing here, because depending upon how the camera is angled will affect how the balance is a bit. So you definitely want to adjust it so you have more of a neutral weight. All right, we'll take off the camera. All right, we're going to show the counterweight setup again. And positioned on the motor side, in position 2, install 4 counterweights. Line up your holes. And then on the opposite side, in position 1, install 4 counterweights. Okay. And then once again, install your Fusion camera. It's the French version. That's pretty good. Now, it's not going to sit on there perfectly. It's going to lean forward. That's just the fact of the mass of this camera. But the stabilizer will stabilize it. Now we turn on the stabilizer. We're going to try out a few filming modes here. So this is the default mode, filming mode, which is lock mode, which means all axes are locked, so it's not going to change anything. But from lock mode, you can invert the stabilizer. And sometimes with these heavier cameras, you can just give a little bit of help, just to make sure they invert correctly. And we'll invert it back the other way. And again. Now we're going to go to filming mode 1 by pressing the joystick in once. And that's called Yaw Follow. And so that's just going to let the gimbal follow the yaw axis here. And then after that, you press it in 2 more times to get 2-axis follow. All right, we can tilt it forward. It's a really great mode to get, manipulate the gimbal any way you like to or choose to. And just go all sorts of directions with it. All right, and we'll call that done on this level.